Hey folks, I'm Brian Latimer here, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about fishing one of my favorite baits to fish, the chatterbait. And I'm going to show you 3 different options that you can buy when you shop at Carl's Bait and Tackle. You know, one thing I love about a chatterbait is how I can really accurately cast it in really tight places. So if I want to fish this bait in somewhere where they don't normally see something that's got a lot of action and a lot of wiggle, I can take my chatterbait and I can skip it under docks. I can skip it under those underhanging banks because the bait skips so well. That's one reason that you want to fish a chatterbait. The second reason I like to fish a chatterbait is that this has one of the most versatile profiles of any bait that I can use. You can see here I've got the jackhammer chatterbait. That specific color right here is called Spot Remover. It's a great shad imitator, so if fish are feeding on shad, this is the color I'm going to throw. Now other times when the water's a little darker, you know, I might want to throw something a little dark, or maybe I want to imitate a different type of forage, a brim forage or something like that. I can switch colors, I can switch trailers. You know, on this one you see I've got like a swim bait, boot tail swim bait on the back of it. A lot of times I'll put a craw in there if I'm trying to imitate crawfish. I can use something with a little bit more a bigger profile if I want to imitate a brim. There's a lot of different things that I can imitate when I'm using a chatterbait. Brim, crawfish, shad, perch. There's a lot of different things that I can make this bait look like, act like, swim like. That makes it a very high percentage bait. You know, anytime we're fishing a chatterbait, one of the most important components of the entire chatterbait is your trailer. I want you to think of your trailer much in the same capacity that you think about blades on a spinnerbait. You know, on a spinnerbait, when you need to move a little bit more water, or you want something to roll your bait a little bit slower, you use a Colorado blade. And when you want to get the bait down deeper, or you want to reel it faster, you're going to use a willow leaf. Well, think about your chatterbait trailers the exact same way. When I want to keep my chatterbait up higher, if I want to work it slower, I'm going to use crawl style trailers. I'm going to use a piece of plastic that's got a lot more buoyancy to it. I'm going to use something that kicks a little bit more water, has a little bit more resistance in the water. So I use crawl trailers a lot, even when I'm trying to mimic shad a lot of times, because it's not so much about the profile, but it's about the resistance. I have 2 tails on there kicking. That gives me more resistance. That lets me work the bait slower, keep it in the strike zone a lot lower, or if I want to keep the bait higher, or if the water's a little darker and I need to move a little bit more water, a crawl trailer is going to be the perfect choice to use. Now, something that you may not think about that I use oftentimes when I'm using a chatterbait is a creature bait. This is a Z-Man palmetto bugs. This is an awesome trailer for your chatterbaits. I'm going to show you why. Number one, it has a bulky body on it. Having that bulky body on it, that lets me skip that bait. It gives me a little bit more surface area so the bait doesn't dig when I go to skip the bait. So it'll let that bait skip a little easier. So if you guys are just starting to get into trying to skip your chatterbaits into different places, start with something that's a little bit more bulky. The palmetto bugs would be a great candidate for it. But the other thing about the palmetto bugs is I can rig this deal vertical, or I can rig it horizontal and get 2 totally different actions out of it. And I'll show you exactly how I rig it here. You know, if I want to rig this bait to where it's going to fall a little bit slower, I can rig it flat side down, just like that. That way the flat side's down, when it goes to fall, it's just going to fall on a plane and just kind of glide when I give the bait slack. Other profile, which is my favorite way to fish it, if I'm trying to mimic a brim or a panfish imitation, what I'm going to do is actually rig this bait vertical, and you'll see the little appendages stand right up and they look exactly like fish fins. So you can also rig it just like that, so the bait's swimming and you get a cool little, it looks exactly like a brim, a panfish, a red ear. Tasty little morsel of chatterbait that the fish just can't simply resist. You know, one of the trailers that you're going to use most often is going to be sort of like a minnow style chatterbait trailer, and this specific one right here is called a razor shads, and it's built specifically for chatterbait. And this guy is probably going to be the best all-around chatterbait trailer for you guys that are just starting out to throw chatterbaits and trying to get some confidence in it. You can see it has a shad profile to it. It's got a serrated body to give it a little bit of extra action, and it helps that bait stay a real tight wiggle when you retrieve it back to the boat. It's not really erratic like it would be with the boot tail, but it lets that bait get down. If you're fishing a deeper grass line, 7-8 foot deep grass line, Razor Shads has a lot less resistance on it because you can see the tail's a lot smaller, but yet you have a big body here that holds the hook very well, so it won't slip down on your hook a lot. One thing I do love about the jackhammer chatterbait, you can see you have two keepers here on the hook, and that's going to keep that plastic up. And you can just rig this. You can just rig the Razor Shads right on there, and it's ready to go. Very simple, built exactly for the chatterbait. So if you're wondering and a little bit stuck on which way to go with your chatterbait trailers, you can't go wrong with the Razor Shads. You know, so we talked about the Razor Shads, we talked about using a creature bait, we talked about using a crawl, and you know, one that I use probably pretty much year round for just about everything is going to be my just plain old boot tail swim bait. You know, boot tail swim bait moves a lot of water. You know, you got a little boot tail on the back of it, just like you do on your swim baits. That's all it is just like a 4-inch swim bait. That moves a lot of water. It's really erratic. What I like about this is when I'm working that bait in grass, or if you, like you saw me earlier, when I'm trying to snap it free from grass, when I snap it free, when that bait falls down, parts action on that little tail, so I'm getting action on the retrieve, and I'm getting action when the bait actually starts to fall too, and that's a great way to trigger strikes with a chatterbait. I'm also going to fish this chatterbait in and around these willow bushes. You know, willow bushes are a great place to fish a chatterbait, and right now I'm using the black and blue chatterbait with the palmetto bugs trailer on the back of it. And that's what in my mind is just a perfect little brim presentation right there. And brim love to hang around the shade of willow trees like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip my chatterbait in and around places like that. You see how well that bait skips way back in there. I'll skip it around any of that stuff, just looking for bass just setting up under there in that shade of that willow tree, waiting for somebody to come by and take advantage of it. The basic thing that you want to look for at all of these places is just ambush points. Anywhere, especially when you're talking about largemouth bass, anywhere there's ambush points, something that he can set up beside, anywhere there's a little bit darker water, anywhere there's a little bit of current is always an ambush place as well. Shade is an ambush place, docks, willow trees, grass, anything they can hide and he feels a little bit more comfortable in. You bring that chatterbait by and there's a good chance you're going to get bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip my chatterbait in and around places like that. You see how well that bait skips way back in there. I'll skip it around any of that stuff, just looking for bass just setting up under there in that shade of that willow tree, waiting for somebody to come by and take advantage of it. Now this is a great example of a place where I like to fish a chatterbait. You can see this is where I live, we call this grass, but it's actually not grass. That's called dog fennel. It's actually a woody type plant. It grows when the lake is down, when the water comes back up, it's flooded, and it's really just a good place for fish to spawn in. A lot of forest species live in this, shad live in it, brim live in it. It's just a good habitat. But you can see I can bring that chatterbait right through that stuff without it getting hung up. This is prime territory to throw a chatterbait. You know, one of the highest percentage places that you can fish a chatterbait is around aquatic vegetation. And even though this isn't true aquatic vegetation, this is a really good place to take this bait and get a couple different style profiles. You know, right now I'm throwing the spot remover, which is more like a shad profile. And I'm just bringing it through that grass, and I can see that silver blade flashing all the way back to the boat. So anytime you can find any kind of grass or anything like that, any kind of aquatic vegetation in the water, lily pads, hydrilla, milfoil, that's the best place to throw the chatterbait, because you can work it through that stuff so well. And the little trailer that I'm using, when I'm reeling it through there and it gets snagged on a piece of grass, and I just kind of give it a real quick pop like that,
that tail just kind of, as the bait frees up and it falls back down, you can just see that tail just kind of wiggling as the bait goes back down. And a lot of times that's when you get the strike. You kind of rip it through that grass, let the bait fall back down real slowly, and you'll get a bite that way.
Hey guys, so that's 5 different ways that's going to help you be a better chatterbait fisherman. Get out there and fish with your chatterbaits. Experiment with the different trailers. Notice the little subtle differences between them. See what rod, reel, and line setup works best for you. And I promise you, the more you fish a chatterbait and spend more time with it, you're going to learn that the chatterbait is one of the most efficient, one of the best ways to catch bass during all times of the year. So go to Carl's Bait and Tackle. Check them out online, see all the different variations of chatterbaits they have online there. Pick you out, guys, out a couple and get out there. I promise you, you're going to have a lot of fun catching fish on the chatterbait this year.